All right. With that, it is 5:31, and I call this meeting officially to order. First off, to roll call attendance. I see Aubrey, Bjorn, me, Brandon, Deanna, Greg, Jess, Joey, Josh, Lacey, Eunice, and Zoe. And like we just mentioned, Sean will be absent today, and Messina and Terry are absent. Just making sure. Okay.
Yep, and Terry should be joining us part way through. She has a class this whole quarter that's going to come up right until the time. So we'll be jumping in as soon as she can make her way over.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Joey. All right, on to agenda approval. Can I entertain a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Motion by Eunice. Any second?
Second.
Seconded by Brandon. We're about to vote. For those who aren't on the committee, please do not vote on this pop-up agenda. And motion passes. All right. Can I entertain a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
And hopefully you all took a chance to look over those, because those are from the 7-hour long one, and so there are 19 pages of minutes. So if you haven't looked, you're not going to be able to quickly skim it right now. And thank you, Aubrey, for compiling all those.
So moved.
Moved by Bjorn. Any seconds?
Second.
Seconded by Brandon. And motion is passed. Okay, on to reports. For me, I would just say to all the committee members, great work so far. We're in the home stretch, as they say, with the last quarter of the academic year. Just keep asking those great questions, keep doing the great work that you've been doing all this time, and I believe in you guys. And with that, I'll pass it on to Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, ASU, we don't have a whole lot to report on just yet, just because the year's getting started, or the quarter's getting started, not the year. But I just wanted to say, you know, as spring's kind of like warming up, just stay safe. That's kind of like a big thing that we're talking about in ASU and just kind of like university wise. I know here in the committee, we probably won't be meeting physically anytime soon, but just as if you're in Ellensburg or wherever you're at, as it kind of like starts opening up, the university is just saying, you know, be vigilant, stay safe, even if you're vaccinated, mask up. And it's just kind of what I wanted to share with you all. But yeah, other than that, we don't have any reports yet. And with that, I yield my time to Joey and Lacey.
Great. Well, welcome back. I hope everyone had a little bit of a break between winter and spring quarter, but we are here and ready to start. And so really the only update that I had is I just wanted to let everybody know that based off of the work that you completed before winter quarter concluded, I took your recommendation up to PBAC last week. And so Joey and I presented to the PBAC committee your recommendation that you all got to see via email. And so I do want to say thank you for the members who did attend. I really appreciated that. That was really good. So hopefully you heard a lot of good conversation. Really what I want to talk about is the process. And so right now, PBAC did not vote on it last week. This is pretty standard. They have kind of adopted a similar practice that our committee does, where they see a presentation and then they wait, and their next meeting, they will conclude the recommendation. And so after this, our April 13th meeting for PBAC will be when they process the recommendation or vote on the recommendation up to the president. So there's obviously a lot of questions, and I think most of you were there, but really they just wanted to, you know, kind of understand the process that all of our students did, and, you know, the training and kind of the rationale behind the recommendation. So I believe we have answered most of all their questions, at least now, at least as of now. And yeah, so I would say it's a public meeting on April 13th. So feel free to Zoom in and see what the recommendation has to say. Does anybody have any questions about PBAC or any of the communication that came out of that?
I have a question. So like we all as a S&A, we talk and we decided to who funded, right? So the president council might reverse it, right? When they reverse it, it's gonna come back to us or no?
So actually, that's a really good question, Eunice. Regardless of what the committee, of what PBAC says, it will go to the president. So, and Joey, feel free to jump in on this as well. But I just want to say, even if they have certain recommendations, that those recommendations go directly to the president, and anything else from the president would come to us. Joey, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you touched on it, Lacey. Anything, PBAC will make their recommendation to the president. The president then reviews PBAC's recommendation as well as S&A's. And the president then moves, if he's in agreement with the S&A recommendation, it then goes on to the Board of Trustees for final review and official approval. If there's any recommended changes from the president, those then get sent back to you all on the committee, which then you all have the ability to either adopt the changes or say no. And then that's where it could then go to that dispute resolution we talked about at that point. But PBAC will review it. Their recommendation along with S&A's will go to the president for that review before Board of Trustees.
And it looks like Bjorn has a question as well.
Yeah. Since the meeting, I've been talking pretty extensively with a lot of people. And one thing that came up was some people had concerns about just the formatting of the meeting. A lot of emphasis was placed on the Q&A section, which was probably inadequate. Brandon, I love your cat. I would die for your cat. Sorry. Sorry, I got sidetracked. I wanted to kind of ask if S&A were to go through any kind of changes, like to streamline stuff for the future, where would those be enacted? I'm assuming they're not our jurisdiction because we're just the committee, but I wanted to see where that kind of thing would start.
I think that would depend, Bjorn, on what the changes or streamlining would look like. So I'll touch on that slightly, and then I'll jump to the other piece and I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know we have communications received, which you all have seen, that touches on some of that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Depending on what the things are, so there are certain pieces, as you all know on the committee, that are tied into our university policy, which governs our procedures, the way that we operate and do things. Some of those are tied to our policy, which is specific to us as the committee, that we have the ability to recommend changes to that policy, which again goes up to the president's university policy advisory committee if there's that. There are some pieces that are internal within the committee that we don't have to run up through the university to change. I will say, depending on what those changes are to the process would depend on how those would go, but any feedback on pieces, I will say this year is unique in terms of deliberation for a couple of reasons. One, deliberation is normally done one day. This year we split it into two. And so normally we do all of that at once. And so there's not a break in between like what we had the Wednesday to Saturday. Additionally, it's normally in person to where we have that. And so they are open meetings. And so based on capacity for the room, people can be there. I will say, as being present for these before, it's normally the committee's there. We're at the large conference boardroom table, and guests and people who are listening can filter into the room. But deliberation is normally at capacity. So people are only in there for periods of time, and they have to wait out in the staging area until someone leaves to be able to come in. But there's not comments during deliberation. It's only public comment before, and then the public comment at the end of it that's there, which are limited to within that. This was one, and I know some of the communications you all saw are on there. The challenge really is in these meetings like today, we can only have based on our subscription that we have up to 100 people. in the Zoom meeting if we don't do the webinar format. Additionally, I know there's pros and cons to it, and we'll talk about what this public comment looks like when I give my report. The challenges being that the public comments are really for these meetings to be shared in there. We had over 500 public comments, which would not have been feasible. We would have had to cut off public comments to get to deliberation at some point, which would have prevented people from being able to share their opinions and getting to those pieces, which is always a challenge as well. So this year was a unique one, given our dynamics. That, again, normally and likely when we go back in person in 4 years, it will be an in-person piece. There will likely be the ability to stream it for people who are not present to be able to watch, or people at the centers and those types of things, but will likely be closer to the other version that we have. But in terms of streamlining things, it kind of depends on what you mean by that in terms of how we would do that or what that would look like, Bjorn. Because the process is pretty set that we don't have a lot of ability. It's the RCWs say that the S&A money is guided by student voice, which is where the committee comes in. That's pretty much all the RCW says, is that it has to be primarily made of students. The rest of it is internal to the university. And so our process is we would provide the recommendation. The other part of that is totally tied to the university structure, that the president has any budget pieces, recommendation go to him via PBAC. And he then vets those to go to Board of Trustees. So we have control of that one small section of how we vet pieces, but most of that is pretty tied to the policies.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Would it be possible to, like, in a future meeting to, like, have a section specifically to discuss, stuff like this? Okay.
Yes. Well,
Thank you.
And I'll jump into my report pieces of things here. I mean, that is one piece, Bjorn, is that honestly, before we wrap up this spring quarter, we as a committee will go through and kind of do our own self-assessment based on feedback that we get from the community as well as others and from you all about the process and making recommendations for changes for the next quadrennial cycle on what we can do. Knowing this looks different than what we've done before, it's going to look different than what we will do in the future, but to get feedback from you all and from community members on what types of things can we adjust or change next time to be able to continue to improve the process. So that will be coming up later this quarter from you all. It is one that we're not going to do this first meeting because, again, I want to be able to have PBAC go through their process and the president and all those. And really, once that's finalized, then to be able to get feedback from you all on ways to improve or things you'd like to see, things that went really well or things that didn't. So the few other things I have, one, just for those, we do have 3 presentations tonight that are coming up. And so this is mostly for the presenters to know. When you get up there, you'll have 10 minutes to kind of give your thing. Some of you may use the whole time, some of you may not. Just for you to know, I'll be kind of keeping track of time in the background, and we'll give a 2-minute and a 1-minute warning in the chat if you get close, because it can be hard to keep track of time when you're on there. But I'll send that via the chat to give you kind of heads up on where we're at. The other part is I will apologize in advance because I am on call for the university. So if the phone rings, I will have to disappear and take it. But if my camera goes off, that's why, which means I had to step away for an emergency call really quick. The other 2 pieces is one for the people present here, just for public comment, will come up. And again, I know the committee has been through this, but knowing we have individuals here before, we have two sets for public comment that will be here. One is going to come up before any of the presentations are on. The other one will be afterwards, right before we close out of the meeting. Anyone is willing to raise your hand electronically on here, and Christian, who's our chair, will call on you for public comment. Anyone who has that, you have 2 minutes for public comment kind of thing within that you can share. Statement, providing information for the committee to be aware within there. Obviously, if there's things that become disruptive or inappropriate, obviously in a Zoom type setting, we have the ability to kind of mute that, but we have not had those issues, so I'm not too worried within that. And then we move on to the other people who have public comment within that. So again, if you're private public comment on any of the pieces, you can choose to do it before the presentations or after to say if you're in support of things or additional parts within that that we do have. The other part, and this is for the committee, is we're going to start hearing these tonight. And we talked about this before back in the fall when we were doing training. But as a reminder that we're at the end of the quadrennial cycle, meaning that we're coming up on the very end of the last base funding cycle. And as a reminder for you all, base funding units are able to carry forward their funds from year to year within the 4 years. But at the end of that quadrennial cycle, any remaining funds in that get swept back to the S&A General Reserve Fund. There is the ability, and again, it's written into our policies, and it's pretty brief with what's written in there in all honesty, that they have the option to request to keep that funding if they come before you all for the committee. And it really says in a very general, not specific, that they can request to keep the funding with good faith shown within those. And so you'll see we have 3 of them tonight. There are others who are on the docket who are going to be coming up later on in spring quarter who are coming forward to request to keep their base funding. So this is not a supplemental request necessarily. It's a request to keep the funds that have already been allocated instead of having those swept back within those. And so you all are going to hear those. We can talk through deliberation. These are going to go very similar, even though they're not supplemental, but just so you all as a committee know. We'll hear the request. You all will have 10 minutes of Q&A with the presenters to gather information, and then we will actually deliberate and vote on those at our next meeting. So you will have a week in between. So I'll remind you as if we're getting into what seems like deliberation instead of Q&A, so we're using that time intentionally. The one part to keep in mind as we have these, as you're looking at them, and I'll remind you all as we go into it, is making sure that it becomes a little nuanced and tricky because the request to keep the funds does not go up beyond other things. It's really us saying that we're going to go outside of our procedures. So unlike supplemental, which then goes to PBAC, and then if the dollar figure is high, it goes to Board of Trustees, this is really saying you can keep the funds. And so one of the pieces that Lacey and I will talk with the presenters beforehand if it seems like a concern, but for you all to keep in mind is to make sure that the intent of what the money is being asked to be kept for is still the same intent that the base funding was given, because we really have to keep it for that reason. If it's something separate, you all may be supportive of it, but that would be something we'd have to recommend they come and request supplemental funds, not to keep the base funding within those. So if questions come up during that, again, ask Lacey or myself, because again, this is something that only comes up once every 4 years when we get to it, but we're happy to answer any questions and help guide you all through the process. And with that, I am done.
All right, thank you, Joey. All right, up next, we have communications received, and I think you did mention a little bit something of that, right, Joey?
Yes, and you all will see, and we've had a number of them, and one, because we're not in the base funding where you all need to be reviewing this ahead of time, they're all public that you have received ahead of time. So I'm not going to go through and read them all unless you all would like me to. I'm happy to. But for the sake of time for our presenters and for public comment, to give time for that, we did receive, which you should have gotten in the email for this meeting and will be posted online, 4 different communications received that were on here. Some related to the base funding, most of them related to the base funding deliberations, and then some pieces related to PBAC communications that they want to make sure were shared with the committee. And so hopefully you've all had a chance to look over those. Aubrey sent them ahead of time. Again, they'll be posted or after this meeting as well, and we'll have the option within all of that. But any questions with any of the communications received? Perfect. Thank you. I've not received any beyond those that have been sent so far, just to update.
All right, thank you. And so on to the public comments. As we stated before, 2 minutes per person, and I think I saw Eunice's hand up.
Yes, Yunus gonna start public comment again. So my first public comment is going to be, I see many students here, so I would like to say that please involve with the international students, because it's the hard times for everyone to make a connection. International office having very good events for this quarter. The first event is going to be International Cafe. with one of the club, the one ride the horses. I forgot the name. I don't know how to call it, but yes, it's the April 15. And the next one is going to be, I am the president of MSA. We are working for the University of Washington about the Asian violence. I know that we have all here believers or non-believers. We have like Christian people, we have Jewish people, we have every religion. But I would like, we are writing the statement about the Asian violence with the University of Washington as MSA. But the last example, the 65-year-old Filipino-American woman's attack in New York in March 29. And we see that Asian Americans continue to be targets of hate crimes in the United States. And I am calling everyone to please pray in yourself for these people who received the violence or who died. And yes, this is one of the issues that we are facing as a person. Please do not forget that we all like brothers, sisters. We don't need to see the violence. Yes, MSA is a Muslim Student Association. Thank you, Joseph. Please, and if you guys interested to sign that statement as a club or as a department as you wish, please contact me via my first name my last name CWU edu. I will send you the copy of the statement as well. Just if you see the violence, please do not shy. Report it in Central Washington University, the report, and I just learned how to report it. So if you don't know about how to report, you can contact with Joseph. Probably he's gonna know more than me about it. Please, if you see something, say something. Yes, thank you.
All right, and also we have 2 screens up, so if you can put up an electric hand, just in case, this can make you more visible. And I see Francis Fay has a comment.
Thank you. So, Services and Activities Committee, my name is Francis Xavier Fay. I am a graduate student in music performance, as well as a teaching assistant for the focus areas of music theory and stringed instruments in the Central Washington University School of Music. Music has always been a part of my life. My mother, Julianne Fay, wisely enrolled me in music lessons at an early age, and as you can see, I've made music my lifelong pursuit. She has taught music in Washington for years and currently teaches at Maywood Middle School in Issaquah, Washington. My peers likely have already or will soon bring to light the significance of travel for all music ensembles and the students in them here at Central Washington University, so I'll spare you that rhetoric. In truth, the impact of S&A funding for our School of Music has a much more widespread impact, which extends beyond the university. As you know, Central Washington University has always placed priority on the education of youth here in Washington. Founded in 1891 as the Washington State Normal School, the university's original goal was to train high school graduates in education so that they may leave the field of education better than they found it. This vision persists today in Central Washington University's emphasis on the excellence of its pedagogy. Ensemble outreach is far more than a concert for its performers. It betters the education of K-12 students in and out of Washington State. At every regional conference sponsored by the National Association for Music Education, as well as the Music Educators Northwest Conference, Central Washington University students and alumni are 2 of the largest populations present. Many teachers at conferences such as these have their students observe collegiate performances, and these performances are truly important to the education of their students. They show young musicians what the world has in store for them, what they could sound like someday. Seeing it fills them with hope and aspirations for the future. Finally, and most importantly, these funds play a key role in educational outreach. K-12 music programs benefit greatly from clinics and workshops, most often hosted or funded by outside organizations such as Central Washington University. Some of my fondest memories of middle and high school orchestra stem from outreach, both at home and in other cities, and the School of Music at Central Washington University was instrumental in the development of those ensembles. In summary, the services and activities funding for the Central Washington University School of Music bears importance beyond the university's population. It benefits the future of K-12 students in and beyond the state of Washington. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Fay. Are there any other public comments, any questions or concerns? I see Carmela, and I'm sorry, I can't see your last name, but you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmela Arcelon McCracken, and I am also the culture chair of FASA, the Filipino American Student Alliance. I would like to bring it to your attention that music is a very expensive pursuit, and that is not the fault of any one student or anyone else. It just is what it is. And music is gatekept from marginalized communities who do not have the financial resources to pay for private lessons, like Francis said, clinics and workshops. So by not giving us the funds that we need, we're depriving students of the opportunity to grow and learn in our profession. There are so many students in the music department who did not have private lessons growing up. Their only access to music was through public schools like Central Washington University. So I implore the S&A committee to please do your part in helping us achieve our goals of going to this clinic. It's very important to us to ensure that everyone, no matter of your financial background, has the access to these things that will help us succeed in the future. Thank you very much from the music department and from FASA as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing none. Lacey,
There's
you have a
one
comment?
more.
I
Oh.
think
There's one more.
Wesley, yep, Wesley has his hand up.
Those were applause hands, but
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, let's move on to new business, which is our presentations for the night. The first one we have today is the Wellness Center Path Advocate, and that is with Marissa Howitt.
Hi, I'm back. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and maybe Lacey will be disappointed, but I have decided to forego an 8-minute music montage that's all about money, just to let you know why I'm back here again. So my name is Marissa Hallett. I'm the Director of Health Promotion at Central Washington University, which means, among other things, my office is responsible for being a confidential resource and advocate for students who have experienced any type of power-based personal violence, which includes stalking, harassment, domestic violence, and sexual assault, including rape. As you know from the committee, I appreciate the time that you've put into the deliberations for the quadrennial funding request, and I thank many of you for the individual messages and sentiments of support for PATH and sexual assault advocacy at the university, even those of you that abstained from voting on the quadrennial funding. So my request is to reclaim the fund balance, to ask to reclaim the fund balance for the PATH advocate to serve as an interim stopgap funding source for the direct service and advocacy that this role provides to students while we sort out, and I've already started initiating conversations with the administration at the university about using 149 or state funded resources to make sure that this position is full-time, it's dedicated, and it's not a stopgap measure, and that it is here permanently, not only because it is mandated, and if you saw the supplemental information from the quadrennial request, like we are required to have a sexual assault advocate on campuses in order to receive federal funding. Not only is it required legally, but I think philosophically, and I know that many of you agree with me, that this is an invaluable resource for CWU students, both on the Ellensburg campus and at our centers and online. So I am asking to reclaim the balance of $82,000 or more, whatever is greater, to the Wellness Center to use as funding for this position, and I've actually been in negotiations for to hire a full-time person for this position today. So we'd like to hire that person, bring them on with a start date as soon as possible, and use this fund, reclaimed fund balance from now until the opportunity to use state funds or to come and request S&A supplemental funding, whichever is necessary. And like I said in my quadrennial funding request, I am as passionate about this as I could possibly be in this role, but I'm also very committed to finding state funds. I've been in contact with Steve DuPont, who is the legislative aid advocate support for the university, to talk with some of our state legislators in Washington state on how we can funnel some of the funding for the next cycle for the university to be directly for this position. So the use of the funds would be identical to its initially appropriated use from this committee. And it really is the best chance we have for getting someone into this position, hiring someone, keeping the important work going while I figure out and sort out the permanent funding for that position. And I didn't bring any visual aids because I feel like it was pretty straightforward. I respect your time, and that's as much as I have to present on. What are your questions?
Any questions? Bjorn, you have your hand up.
How long has the position of path coordinator been unfilled, and you've been taking it on while it's been unfilled, correct?
Yes, that's right. It will be a year in May, so we're at about 10.5 months since the position has been vacated.
Thank you for taking that on, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I realize that it is, I do not want to put too much on one person in a position, but like when making a hiring offer, I realize that it's not only like a job for them and us, but I'm also like, this cannot be a third of my responsibilities, right? Like I've been doing 3 people's jobs for 10 months, and I hate to feel like that I'm dropping the ball on things or not be able to do it adequately. And what I can say anecdotally is that while the number of cases that have been referred to PATH have been lower throughout COVID, and that is typical across institutions, we've seen that both because of the lower number of students on campuses. I can say personally that the acuity of some of the cases that I've seen is really concerning. And I think that bears out across the national spectrum when we look at domestic violence specifically, people who are put into living situations where they have to be in quarantine or they're living in close proximity and maybe don't have the same kind of escape that they once had with work, or they're having to work remote with the added pressure sometimes of parenting or co-parenting and schooling kids while everybody's at home. I will say that I've seen some of the more serious and concerning cases come in throughout this time with COVID. And so I'm really hopeful that we can have this position funded in the interim so that we can get somebody who is qualified and can be really dedicated to that work. I see maybe Eunice has a question.
Yes, Eunice has a question.
I don't know. I was attending some interviews with some position for the wellness center. Is you guys hiring someone? Is this same position you're talking about?
This is the same position. Yes. Thank you, Eunice, for coming to the open forum.
You guys have decided to someone who already hired someone?
We have not yet hired. We're in the final stages of that process.
Yeah, my question is like, I'm just curious. For example, I think S&A is gonna decide to go back or not. For example, if S&A say no, you guys not be able to hire that person?
Yeah, basically that's the short-term answer. If S&A does not decide to forward our fund balance, we don't currently have the funding to be able to hire for that position, which would be a really awkward phone call for me to make to somebody. Remember that interview that you did? We don't have any money for it.
Thank you so much for clarification.
Yeah.
And Joey, before we get to your question, there is one in the chat.
That's all I was going to say.
Okay, so the question is, how long will this current rollover amount fund the position for? About a year or just over, or what exactly, how long will that be?
Yeah, just about a little over a year.
Okay, thank you. And are there any more questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you again for your presentation, Ms. Howitt. If we have any more questions, we'll reach out to you.
Okay,
We'll
I
vote on this
appreciate
next
it.
week.
All
Yes,
right,
we'll
thank
vote next
you
week,
all.
yes.
Thank you all for your time.
And thank you for coming out. Okay, up next, we have the Music Department CWU Symphony Orchestra, and that is with, please excuse my pronunciation, Nicholas Kaoli.
Hey, good evening, and thank you for hearing this carryover request. My name is Nicholas Kawili. I am the orchestra director of Vietnamese and Filipino descent, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the CWU Symphony Orchestra and the music department. The music department is requesting to carry over about $100,000 of unused funds from previously approved quadrennium-based funding. These funds were earmarked to be applied toward an invited performance to Chicago at the Midwest International Clinic for December 2020. The Midwest Clinic is considered the pinnacle for recognition of a student ensemble at the international level. It's a clinic that began in 1946. With this performance, the CWU Symphony will have batted for the cycle, receiving invitations for state, regional, national, and this would constitute an international recognition. The application process began in late 2019. We were accepted in April 2020. You see my attachment to my requests with that letter. The conference was due to be held in December 2020, and of course it was canceled due to the COVID pandemic. The invitation process was rigorous. It's based off of reputation. It's a strict process of audio and video recordings of the current orchestra, copies of past programs, certificates from previous invitations, recommendations from educators and professionals in the fields, and finally, a blind jury assesses the materials for consideration. For most programs, multiple applications are submitted before they're ever accepted. CWU was chosen after just one application. In the 75-year history of this conference, we would be the only the seventh orchestra, period, to be invited to perform. We would also be the first orchestra west of Kansas to be invited. The previous institutions were Indiana, University of Houston, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, the Chicago Youth Symphony, Wichita State, and now CWU. The CWU Symphony is made up of 75 to 85 members. About 10 to 50% are non-majors. I would consider it one of the most diverse ensembles on the campus. We have all class levels, freshman through graduate. We have representatives from all genders, race, and sexual orientations. We have the most diverse collection of instruments, whereas in the choir, everyone's a vocalist. We have winds, brass, percussion, strings. We also serve our community quite a bit. Thousands over the course of a year attend our concerts, including our very popular Halloween concerts. We now do YouTube videos and live streams. We also serve as a recruiting force for CWU in that we host a 30 group festival that brings about 1,200 students and families and their families to the university. Travel of this kind is a little bit unusual for a big group like this in that we have to rent large instruments such as cellos, basses, large percussion, contrabassoons, and bass clarinets. If we take these on a plane, we usually are forced to pay for an extra seat to take these instruments with us. The Midwest Clinic has announced that they will continue as planned for December 2021, and they have extended that invitation to us because it was a cancellation for 2020. I am sad to consider that the seniors that will be graduating this year might not be able to participate as an enrolled CWU student, so we'll have to take some considerations there. And with that, thank you for your time, and I and the many music students here are willing to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Bjorn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, this was a supplemental request from, okay, my bad.
No, yeah, this is from the base, from the previous quadrennium.
Okay, yeah, I am totally off my game, sorry.
No problem.
Any more questions?
Eunice?
Oh, Eunice.
Hi, Dr. Nicholas. I have
I
just,
see
I
your hand up.
didn't hear, I'm sorry. I just didn't hear if you mentioned it that I was just reading the email by President of Board of Directors from the clinic.
Yes.
So is this conference is going to be happen?
Yes, it has been announced that they will continue the conference this December 2021.
December 2021. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Are there any more questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you for your presentation today. If we have any more questions, we'll reach out to you and we will be voting on this next week.
Thank you very much.
Of course, thanks for coming out. All right, finally, we have a presentation from the community garden at the Wildcat Farm, and that is with Kate Dottie.
Hello, thank you all for having me back. I'm Kate Dowdy. I'm the farm manager for the Wildcat Neighborhood Farm. We are requesting to carry over up to $24,000 to be able to expand the services that we do offer, to be able to build out our seed library, provide more transplants for our garden participants, as well as respond to any access needs that come from our garden participants. One thing that we did not account for is having a portable toilet out at the garden. And that was something that did come up. And the closest restroom facilities are a decent walk away. We have access to the restrooms on the edge of the rec field that's right next to the garden, but that's not very close. And so being able to carry those over would allow us to respond to that need and continue to build out our seed library, as well as putting in perennial plants that do come at a higher price point than our average seeds and transplants that we provide from year to year. I also don't have any visual aids, and I don't, my best estimate for what it would cost to have a portable toilet out there for the rest of this funding cycle is about $8,000. That's for the total 4 years. I think it would be about $2,000 a year. And that came up today, so I don't have a very detailed estimate in place for that. So I apologize for that. But if there are any questions, please let me know.
Any questions? Joey, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just for to make sure that I'm remembering correctly and to help remind the committee on this, Kate, some of the money you all have left, in fact, I think a lot of the money that you all have that's carry forward had to do with the transition of the program, and that's why we had a chunk of time where that money was not being spent, even outside of the COVID situation. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. The original, I think when a lot of the money that was requested the first time the garden requested S&A funding, which I believe was fiscal year 17, did not end up getting spent. And right at the end of that cycle, the garden transitioned to being managed by the farm. And so the reason we have all of that sort of left over is from that transition. And so, and then with the pandemic, we actually didn't end up spending a whole lot of it last year either. but I think that if we did have it available, it would really allow us to build out our program kind of beyond the bare minimum, which is where we tend to operate with it, which would be beneficial to us, certainly.
There is a question in the chat. Is there an option for a more permanent type of restroom to be built? If so, do you have a cost estimate?
So I was just looking into that today because I know that the UW, the University of Washington Farm, has a composting toilet. That would be cool, certainly. I was able to find, and I would be happy to come back with a more detailed presentation on this. Again, this kind of just came up today. That cost would be something that I think I would need to request supplemental funds for, or perhaps find another funding solution. With the considerations that come into play as far as environmental concerns, it would be better to go with a prefabricated unit, and those can be quite costly. My best guess would be somewhere around $30,000 for that type of installation, and that's more than what we would have available to us from here, but that would be the ultimate goal.
Bjorn, you have your hand up.
I apologize for making you the porta potty expert tonight, and it's okay if you don't have an answer for this one and like gotta come back. But what would be the upkeep cost of having like a permanent fixture?
Well, I don't know. I was just looking into that. I think that from what I understand, if you get a prefabricated unit, you're kind of the system is sort of taking care of itself, and you have someone come to empty it out, which is also a cost with having a porta potty. And so, but I am not sure like what that, I've put in some requests for more information for some folks, so I'm happy to come back. But I think that has to happen like once or twice a year. I don't have all of that information, and what it would cost.
All right, thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries.
And I think Greg has his question.
Yeah, hi. And my question's really, I think, more for Lacey. And this is just in general. This is not about your request, Kate. I'm just thinking out loud over a base funding, and that we're going to see more probably requests of carryover in the next few meetings that we all have as an S&A committee. And this is my first time going through this process. And I don't want to pick on anybody here necessarily, and I can't think of any good examples, but I'm just thinking that let's say the Spurgeon Gallery wants to carry forward money. I don't actually know if, I don't think we do, but for example, and Heather came forward and said, look, I want to carry forward $5,000 because we've got this great chance of bringing in this international artist X who's really fantastic for this kind of money. And so then we say, okay, cool, let's go ahead and carry forward. It's really just base funding. So Heather and artist X decides, oh man, we can't go through with this. We can't do it for whatever reason, because COVID continues or something else. Then is that just carried? That's just part of their next base funding if they have base funding going forward and they can use it however they want, even though we've looked at it this way, or is this? I'm just thinking out loud here.
So, Greg, I think I get your question. And so really when we're talking about carryover funds, and again, this is obviously very general, is I would advise the committee to have a deadline. And so that would be what my advice would be, unless there was some reason specific, would give it a fiscal year. There could be other scenarios which might take 2 years. So if there is a trip that maybe isn't going to happen until next summer, then that could be, an extended date. And so there's might be certain kind of nuances that wouldn't necessarily mean that it would be just one fiscal year. But regardless, when we do finalize the actual motion, I would want the committee to put some sort of deadline on there so that we would be able to track that on the budget and accounting side.
Cool. My internet froze, so I didn't catch all that. But all right, this is
Well,
for the benefit of everybody, so that's great. Thank you.
No, but I
You
mean,
can go
as
back
far
and
as
watch the recording too.
I will. I will. Thank you, Joey.
so as far as the committee is concerned, I mean, were there any kind of questions, Greg? I mean, really the short version of it is let's give a deadline of either a fiscal year or something that would apply appropriately for that funding. And that also gives those program managers an opportunity to say, okay, great, I have a year. And I can spend this amount, or it could be maybe 2 years, depending on kind of what it would look like, or just you need to expend it all by whatever kind of magical date would apply to it. But I do think that when we're talking about questions and everything is be, mindful of what they want to fund and how they might be able to spend that money in a time period.
Cool. Thank you.
There was just one other thing I wanted to add is that it would also allow some cushioning for our student employee in case they need to work extra hours here and there as things come up, as they do, despite our best estimates.
Bjorn has his hand up.
Yeah, again, sorry if you can't answer this tonight, but following on Greg's question, what would a good window of time be to get these purchases set up for the farm or the garden?
Well, so as far as this, the porta potty is concerned, I mean, I'd like to get that set up as soon as possible for the specific need, and so and that's something that we would be needing to have. We didn't include it in our base funding request for this year. And so it would be something that we would need to have over the next 4 years unless we were able to find a permanent solution before that, which I'm not sure that I can speak to when that would even be, because I don't know what this is going to bring, what that would bring up with like facilities and the broader picture of that conversation. So I don't know that I can answer that question right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Eunice, I see your hand up.
It might be a weird question. I don't know, because like, how are you guys gonna keep the track that non-students use the restroom or not?
We would probably have a key in our shed that's locked. Okay. And only our participants have the combination to it. So we would make sure that the toilet is locked and then that the key is inside the locked shed.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. That was a thing that we thought about. And if we were to have a permanent, like if, the stars aligned and we had a composting toilet out there, that would also be locked. Just, I guess that's an unnecessary bit of information.
Are there any more questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Kate, for coming out. If we have any more questions, we'll get in contact with you and we'll deliberate on this next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Okay, do we have any old business today? All right, no old business. So with that, I would like to have the second call for public comment. Any questions, comments, or concerns? And just a reminder, there are 2 screens, so if you can put an electric hand up, that'd be great. I do see a hand from, Sadie Morales.
Yeah, you got it. Hello, my name is Sadie Morales, and I am speaking as the Central Washington University Orchestra Senator for the National Association for Music Education. And I just wanted to bring us back to the Midwest Clinic. The Midwest Clinic is an honor, not only for this department, but for the school. We would be representing the school at an international level, which is really just a prestigious honor that does not come around quite often. It would truly just be a crime to our education to deprive us of this experience and the honor that we have worked very hard for. The opportunities provided by this clinic will span further than the walls of Central. They will take us into our professional careers, and that is not something we can get back. So thank you for your consideration for the funding, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Any other comments, questions, anything of the sort? I see a hand from Wesley Hunter.
Oh, yes, that's actually a hand this time. I'd like to just add one tiny little thing on to what Dr. Kawili was saying. He mentioned that we were one of only, I think, 7 orchestras, he was saying. As a matter of fact, we were one of 7 collegiate level orchestras that has been invited to this clinic. However, many high school high school orchestras, I should say, get invited year after year. And I think one extra thing I'd like to add on to all of this is that this is a fantastic outreach tool. Our School of Music tends to be kind of a hidden gem in this area. I would not have known, I'm from Arizona, and I would not have known about the School of Music had it not been for a close friend of mine who was from here. So this is an incredible amount to have an incredible opportunity to have an international audience and to recruit for students outside of our little Pacific Northwest region. So I think that's an important distinction to point out, that there are many extremely high-level high school groups that perform at this, and that this is an incredible opportunity for us to include more of wider diversity from across the country of students here. And as well, I'd like to say I agree 100% with what my other music colleagues have been saying about the benefits for the students ourselves, as well as the benefits for our school. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I see a comment from Carson and Reed.
Yeah, I'm also a music major, and I've done a lot of camps outside of Washington. And outside of Washington, not a lot of people have heard it, but I've compared a lot of curriculums, and a lot of times Central music program is a lot more rigorous, and it's what people have been looking for. And so I think going to this clinic could help people find the place that they want to be. A friend of mine had no clue about this school, and he started looking into it when I went to New York after I got there, and he's on the West Side now studying music over here, and he was going to just go to a college by his hometown, and he's like, I'm so much happier here that I actually got a chance to look around. So I think that's what I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any more questions, comments, concerns?
There's Nate Sharp has his hand up.
Nate, all right, Nate, you go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. One thing about that, I'm with the music department. My name is Nate Sharp. One thing about the Midwest Clinic that I don't think people have been talking about enough is it is, in fact, a clinic. There will be presentations, and we'll be watching other people's very high-level performances. And as such, we will all become better educators, whether we teach privately or in the public school system. If the Central Washington Music Department is able to go to the Midwest Clinic, that will have long-lasting effects in the quality of music education in the entire state of Washington and wherever else it is that we end up teaching.
Thank you, Nate. Any more comments? All right, I see Eunice's hand up.
Hi, I just want to comment something. It's my personal opinion. There's none of what I'm gonna say is not none of the committee members. That I see some comments about the S&A. I know that some people are not happy about some decisions that the S&A gave. Some people happy, some people not. Like, I am a student, and I know that myself that I was in the meeting for S&A until midnight. I see the time. because of the different time zone. But as a myself, I feel like so lucky that I am still in the S&A, that I know that where the money goes. I didn't even know about what S&A about until this year since thing. I just wanted to let you all know that we try as a team best to spend all these students' money in the right way, best way, for beneficial for not only one student, for the students from all centers. And our decisions, my decision based on was the best for my fellow friends, So I see some comments in the social media about that. Seems like some, not hate crime, but some kind of things. And I respect that any comment you guys giving, because this is your right to say. But I want to also remind you that we are not trying to take some of money of you guys or something. We want to make sure that the money you guys paying actually our monies to use by right way. And like I say, please, you can also be the member of this committee next year and be advised other people to join too, because like as an international student, I learn a lot of things. I was thinking like what I am spending money for, and while sitting here, I met with good advisors, Lacey, Joseph, other students, professors. They're all good people sitting here, and if you're still interested to joining these committees, you're welcome to join. There's no requirement or something. You're welcome to email Brandon, our current VP. He can give you the information, or you can also email the Joseph or Lacey for next year. This is the best way to connect, best way to know that the money where it goes. And please be understanding what we are doing here. I love you all. I talk too much. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Eunice. And I see Bjorn's hand up.
Per Eunice, I haven't actually seen anybody doing anything too cruel, but I also don't spend a whole lot of time on social media. But I want to emphasize how cool it is for me to see so many people showing up and speaking out in a respectful and constructive manner too. Like we had 130 people at the deliberation in the audience, and I was so incredibly impressed. And I want to honor that by making myself available to talk with you or answer questions or find somebody to answer questions. I'll put my email in the chat box. Don't have office hours scheduled yet for this quarter, but I do want to make myself available just to honor the work y'all are putting in.
Thank you, Bjorn. I see Francis Fay's hand up.
Sorry, I hope I am not stealing the floor from anyone else, but just a point of clarification. The reason this money went unspent is because the date of the clinic got moved. That is something that's completely out of our control. The money would have been spent, if this pandemic didn't happen, and honestly, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We're not asking for anything extra. We're only asking for money that would have been spent the same way that always has been. And it feels a little bit like we are trying to take something from someone else, but it's already been delegated. So we're just asking, let us have this for just a little bit longer so that plans can go almost as they originally have. Thank you. And
Thank you. I think I saw another comment a comment from Eunice. Please vote for student government elections. So yeah, that is coming up this month. How do we do that? Ask someone. I think Brandon would know more about that than I would. So Brandon, if you could help us out.
Yeah, for sure. This month we'll be starting kind of the public debates. So, voting is not open and it won't be open for a little bit. But we're through primaries. We're into the general now. If you want to, yes, Bjorn did it. It's right there on the elections tab, which he also just put right there too. But yeah, it's on the elections tab where it has its deadline, but it's on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. this month, I believe, starting in 2 weeks, I believe. On the 9th, I think. So that will be the first debate. And then the following week will be another debate. And then we'll kind of move into the voting time at that point, but it's through presence. So all you really need is just your MyCWU credentials when voting opens. If you're in the Ellensburg campus, we'll be doing tabling through the CIRC, as well as social media. We'll be pushing it through, but you just can vote online through the Presence portal. But what I do encourage is that you do tune into those public debates, start getting on social media, following people's platforms, so you can understand, I guess, like what, I guess, initiatives people are running on for next year.
And it does say in the chat, Mikhail, it is April 14th at 6 p.m. and April 21st at the same time.
Best president ever.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? There's another comment. Okay. Seeing none, may I entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I make a motion.
Motion by Eunice. Any second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Bjorn. Motion passes. All right. Thank you, everyone who came out, and have a safe night.
Have a great evening, all. Thanks.